Raise your right hand.
Now on Indianapolis This Week, he's been chosen to be the next chief of the Metro Police Department. We sit down to talk one-on-one with Rick Hite. Changes to education in Indiana, including controversial new licensing requirements for teachers. What will they mean for the classroom? We're joined by one of the leaders of the State Teachers Union.
From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
And thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. I'm Todd Connor. We start this week talking about safety and fighting crime in Indianapolis. Indianapolis officially has a new top cop, but he's hardly a stranger to the position. Mayor Greg Ballard this week named Rick Hite to head IMPD, a job he'd held as interim for the past 7 months. In the announcement, Mayor Ballard said Hite had brought much-needed reforms to the police force over the past 2 years. And we are joined now by Rick Hite, who was formally named the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department on Thursday. He served 32 years with the Baltimore Police Department before coming to Indianapolis 2 years ago. Yes. Chief Hite, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. You've been around for a little bit, but what, in your official capacity now, is first on your agenda as far as what you want to get done?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the mayor and public safety director for having confidence in me. Thank the citizens and those officers and rank and file members of the department, sworn members who wrapped arms around me and prepared me for this position in terms of understanding Indianapolis. I think the culture is such that people wanted to see leadership that works from the ground up, but also willing to be inclusive of ideas, recognize traditions of a department, but at the same time looking for change and innovative change at the same time.
So specifically, do you have something that this is the first thing I'm going to tackle now that I have the position to do it?
Well, we all talk about numbers in terms of looking at crime and violence in our community, but we also have to look at staffing. And one of the things I wanted to know, wanted our people to know in the department, that we care, and that it's for the citizens that we work for you. And in doing that, we had to work on internal equity and building trust within the department, building the trust among community stakeholders, but going out and basically getting to know the community, making sure people understand we need your support. You need to be in front of us and beside us, not us pushing you behind us in the forefront of change. So we're looking at our staffing positions in the same way. We want to look at those who we can reposition back into the core mission.
So you want to get more officers on the streets?
That's what we're saying, but we also want to go with a message and a meaning and a purpose and a direction. It's assessing crime means looking at intelligent-led policing, looking at what is happening, where it's happening in our communities, and making sure people feel comfortable in our policing strategy. So we want to put key people back in areas where officers can be seen and visible and engaging with community.
Even before you, staffing was an issue with the IMPD, not having enough folks and trying to keep those numbers up, so this isn't really anything new. Are you going to be able to get those numbers back up, or are you just going to work with what you have and have to deal with that till more money comes in? Well,
staffing issues are nothing new to policing in general. Every police department in the country is faced with looking at what makes sense in the numbers. Apply the right people in the right places to make sure we get the right gains. But the whole idea is, again, assessment, and looking at systems and within the department, some which we can collapse, some with more efficiency groups to be able to look at what makes sense in terms of working more efficiently. But I think that, again, is assessing what community needs are. What's the expectation of a police department? I talk about Indy in this way, and then we have 4 different policing kind of styles here. We have a rural, suburban type policing. We have a kind of like a hinterland type policing along with that. And along with that, we have, of course, the urban policing style. So in looking at that, we have to make sure we apply those principles as we deploy people back to the street.
Troy Riggs, the new public safety director, I think, said that some of this you'll take care of through use of new technology or different technology to try to, is that to try to free up officers?
It is, but we want to make sure we use technology in a way that, along with human capital, and understand there are some technologies out there that streamline our ability to get the job done, looking at telephone reporting, looking at e-line reporting, for example, looking at our CAD system, our community aid dispatch and reporting systems, but also looking at ways to try to make sure we identify opportunities to engage community. I mean, we can't discount human capital.
Right.
There's much that we can do in terms of partnering with them as well.
Now, you've been around here for a couple of years almost, and Troy Riggs has been around for a couple of months coming from Texas. You're very familiar with the man who preceded Riggs, Frank Stroud, before. Right. He was considered an outsider by a lot of people. And now you have both of you coming in from out of state in recent years and even months. are you going to have to try to win over the police department, the men and women on the ground, and even the public, and say, hey, we're not outsiders anymore. I've been around here for a while. We can take on the challenge and do what we need to do.
I like to think that they can say they've seen me at 3 o'clock in the morning at homicide scenes. I've been at funerals of both the victims of violent crime in our community as citizens and police officers. I was there at David Moore's funeral. We worked together, we laughed together, we cried together. I've walked the streets and walked the roll calls. I've been where they've been. I've been in law enforcement 33 plus years now. So I think that there's a sense of connectedness. They're recognizing that this guy Hite cares a bit. He's not showy, he's not pushy, he wants what he wants in terms of the best for our people in our community, but he's willing to also share his wisdom, but not his will, opposing his will. I like to think they think I'm a cop's cop in the sense that I understand and feel what they feel, but I also got to hold them accountable to the oath we all took.
Right.
And that's important.
Okay. In the last 30 seconds we have or so, what update can you give us on the South Side explosion? Where do things stand? Are we going to see any arrests anytime soon?
Well, I think you've gotten some information from Chief Coons and the Public Safety Director. What we're saying is we're moving diligently to bring this to a close. I'm not at liberty to share all our investigative techniques or what we're talking about, but I think it's well on its way.
Could we see something before the end of the year?
You'll see something when we get something.
All right. Fair enough.
Right.
Chief, congratulations on the new position, the permanent position.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
All right.
All right, changing the rules about who can teach in your child's classroom. We talk about the controversial new rules with a leader from the State Teachers Union next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. A controversial plan to change Indiana's teacher licensing system has received the approval of the State Board of Education. The board voted 9-2 on Wednesday to approve the plan, which includes changing requirements for making it into an Indiana classroom, specifically for adjunct teachers. A recent college grad with a bachelor's degree and a minimum 3.0 GPA can get that teaching certificate just by passing a test.
I'm most disturbed by the fact that an adjunct an adjunct teacher can be now with 5 years with no pedagogy, no methodology, and how to deal with children in child development and child psychology.
I hired welders, I hired computer technicians, I hired heavy equipment operators who were really content specialists in their area, who then went on to learn to teach while they were teaching our students in career and tech ed.
Now, before the vote, Superintendent-elect Glenda Ritz urged the board to table the provision until she takes office in mid-January. All right, we want to talk more about those requirements now with Teresa Meredith. She is the vice president of ISTA, the State Teachers Union. She is also a teacher in Shelbyville. And Teresa, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Let's start first of all with those new licensing requirements. The board passed it 9-2. It seems pretty basic. Somebody can come out of college and with a correct GPA, pass a test, and they're in.
That's the way it's set up.
But how does ISTA feel about that?
Very concerned, very, very concerned. I mean, you wouldn't want to go to a surgeon who had never actually practiced with a licensed, trained surgeon observing and participating side by side. You would never think of putting your children in a pool with a lifeguard who doesn't even know how to swim. And those are just two examples of things that we believe are comparable, that this is basically what it's boiling down to.
And so what are the current regulations, or what would you like to see still be in place?
Well, a minimum right now of 7 weeks of student teaching, actually being in charge of a classroom, everything from the discipline to the content to the management of how to give the grades.
So not even a requirement of student teaching?
No. No, just a 3.0 with a bachelor's degree and passing a test. That's it.
So in addition to student teaching, what else would you like to see?
Student teaching, some prior practicum experiences, shorter term experiences to make sure that if you weren't quite on the right track, that maybe the coursework could be adjusted so that whatever your challenging area was, perhaps it was classroom management, that you would have a little more coaching and practice and be able to serve under master teachers before you actually had to go out and do that on your own.
Now, in fairness, this isn't for every teacher in every discipline, correct? Like
correct.
If you want to teach elementary education, you do need some other...
There are still some basic pedagogy pieces required, but the bottom line is that it's an easier way to get into the profession, and I'm not so sure easier is better.
We talk about pedagogy for the average person out there who's not a teacher, doesn't know that. What does that mean for them?
Pedagogy is all of the pieces in the classroom that you maybe don't really think about, the things that just happen in terms of someone looking on. But for a teacher, they're very deliberate. Everything from the way a classroom is set up, the way, the order in which lessons are given, the discipline plan in a room, the way that you handle a child with special needs or with a special learning issue, everything, just every aspect that actually impacts that instruction is part of pedagogy.
Now, I'm sure a lot of people see these new licensing requirements and it appeals to them, but do you really expect a lot of teachers to take that route?
I hope not, and I hope there are administrators who believe enough in the value of the pre-service training that needs to be had that they won't be hiring folks that have this kind of credential anyway. I fear that people who can't get a job in their initial degree will look at it as something that they can maybe go try until they find a way to get into a different job, and teaching should not be, it just shouldn't be a stopover.
All right, I want to move on to a different subject and read a quote from Governor Mitch Daniels from a speech in Washington earlier this year, last month as a matter of fact. He said that Glenda Ritz won her campaign through illegal activity, and he says if you're a fan of anything goes politics, it was a creative use of illegal but still creative use of public resources. We got emails sent out on school time by people who were supposed to be teaching someone at the time, and they were all about Tony Bennett. Your thoughts on that? He's calling what a lot of teachers did illegal.
I would strongly disagree with him. She had 1.3 million votes, 1.3 million. The work that educators did on Glenda Ritz's behalf came after hours, came on our own time, with our own phones, with our own computers and our own systems. And I even know that Glenda's campaign warned teachers and said, please don't use your school resources to do any campaigning of any sort. So
do you refute what the governor says then?
I do. Our teachers worked hard, all the educators worked hard for Glenda, but they did it in a way that was appropriate. You know, she didn't have the kind of dollars to be on TV, but she ran a campaign that was phenomenal in terms of personal outreach. And those happened at things, well, in my own circumstance, for example, when I had my oil changed, I was talking to the gentleman who was at the counter and the person who changed my oil. In the grocery store, I was talking to people in the line, my clerks, I mean, all of those kinds of interactions. That is the work that educators did for Glenda.
In the 30 seconds we have left, give me one or two things you would like to see Superintendent-elect Ritz go after when she gets into office.
I'd like her to bring the professionalism back to the profession, make sure teachers are highly trained and highly qualified before they're entering the classrooms, and I'd like to see her make the testing process of our students somewhat simpler and easier to understand and less cumbersome so that we can actually get back to really teaching what children need to know.
All right, Teresa Meredith, Vice President of ISTA, thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead on Indianapolis this week, Governor-elect Mike Pence and his tax plan facing opposition from his own party. Our political insiders talk about that next on Indianapolis This Week. This week, we are joined by our political insiders, Kip Tu, former Democratic Party chairman, and Abdul Hakim Shabazz, publisher of IndyPolitics.org. And gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Sure,
good
to be here.
All right, teacher licensing. I know you want to talk about this, Kip.
I do.
The Board of Education voted 9-2. We just talked about it with Teresa, and essentially making it easier for people to become teachers in the classroom.
Yeah, people that have not had any field experience and haven't been with students, haven't spent time being a student teacher. That's what I think Glenda Ritz's biggest problem with that is that she wants to make sure that when teachers get into the classroom, they've had some sort of experience dealing with students, because there's all kind of issues that come to the classroom. And so I think they should have slowed down. I think it's unfortunate that they didn't. I think that they wouldn't have done any harm by slowing down and at least listening to her, what she has to say about that. I think it's a sign of arrogance that they're ignoring the election results.
First of all, these proposed rules have been sitting around since June, so it's not like they just came out of nowhere and say, quick, let's just change the rules first thing tomorrow. And by the way, we have thousands of people in this state who go into classrooms and teach who've never taught before. They're called adjunct faculty. They're at every college. They're at every university in the state where we go and we find people with content-specific experience, and we ask them to come to the classroom and share their experiences. There are enough safeguards in this proposal. You know, you can't necessarily do this at that elementary school level because there are some child development and child psychology issues, and the board recognized that. But basically what we're saying is, guess what? If you're a physicist and you did well in physics, you might actually be able to teach physics. What a novel concept.
Well,
I mean,
I don't think anybody objects to having people that have expertise, content-specific expertise. The question here is, do they have the requisite training in dealing with students or not? And that's a serious issue, and it's something that deserved a little bit more time and study, and that's what she asked for, and they just rolled right over her. The one thing good, though, is she's going to be the one that implements the rules with respect to this, so she's going to have another bite at the apple.
And if she messes around too much, then it just basically tells the State Board of Education, hey, you're not doing what we asked you to do, and just makes it easier for the legislature to make this an appointed position in 2016.
Well, you mentioned the rules have really been around since last summer, but yet weren't the rules...
The proposal has been around.
Right, the proposals. Yeah. But don't people want them changed? Isn't that why they voted Bennett out?
I would argue no, because not only was it the teachers.
What a surprise! You would argue no.
No, Bill, because you remember, it wasn't just the teachers and their very good social media campaign. It was also, part of the Tea Party movement who had a problem with Common Core, which the President Barack Obama and Tony Bennett were pretty much on the same page. There were a couple other things involved. So, to say that, it was a referendum on Tony Bennett, you can, but you can't. And by the way, I would also argue that when the voters elected Tony Bennett in 2008, they elected him to fill out his term until, next year. So he's still doing what the voters asked him to do back in 2008.
Right.
That's a silly argument, I think. And again,
it's no sillier than saying they should wait for the new person to show up.
Here's the thing that I find really particularly ironic. At a time when Republican leaders in education reform are saying we need to teach, we need to make sure that we're testing these students to make sure they're doing well, they're eliminating tests for the people who are supposed to be administering those tests, and it doesn't make sense to me.
But you know what? But you can't practice law without a law license. How do we get our law licenses? We pass a test. It's called the bar exam.
Yeah, that's what they're asking the teachers to do. And your guys are saying, no, they don't need to pass any tests. They can just go in and teach.
No, we are saying that
the
rule is that you do have to take a test.
You would have to take a test.
You have to take a test,
yeah.
But not to
show some proficiency. Oh my
only
God.
in the subject matter, but not with the kids.
And God forbid somebody not go through a college of education, actually learn how to do something productive in this universe.
All right,
let's get me started on that.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
All right, let's move to another subject. Mike Pence's proposed tax cut. He's asking for a drop in the state income tax rate. Even some of his own people are not really on board with this. Okay.
1982 was the last time we had an income tax increase in the state of Indiana. The state of Indiana has been very fortunate over the years to have had the foresight to allow for gaming to really prop up the state's budget for many, many years. We've reached a point where we've cut beyond the bone, and I think that's what a lot of people think. Even Republican legislators know that there is not a lot of money, there's not a lot of wiggle room, and they're not happy about being forced into a situation where they're going to cut the income tax because they think that they've cut beyond the bone. And Mike Pence obviously ran on that, and he's going to try to push for it. It'll be interesting to watch.
Shouldn't there be some backdoor dealings before this gets out in public, before he really even takes office? I mean, it seems to be creating a problem where there may not have to be one.
No, not necessarily. I mean, having the open discussion, the transparency is actually good. I mean, a lot of people thought that Republicans were just going to come in and, and steamroll and all be on the same page. No, Republicans have differences, just like, Democrats.
You guys don't agree on everything?
Just like Democrats. Have different degrees of republicanism, as some of us would like to say. But what the Pence people believe is that they can keep 12.5% in the state bank for reserves, still meet all their obligations, and still do a tax cut, leaving hundreds of $millions, in cash in the bank for the state of Indiana. The question is, will they be able to convince lawmakers with the inheritance tax phase out and with the corporate income tax cut? The Pence people still think they can do it, even with those taxes in there. The question is, can they sell it to enough lawmakers?
Is there someplace else we could put this money instead of
There's lots
giving
of
it back to the people?
We don't have enough school counselors. We don't have enough people that work at DCS. We don't have enough bridges and roads that are in great shape in the state of Indiana. We are one of the lowest tax states in the country, in a country that has that overall taxes are lower than they've been any time since the 50s.
Not that it matters a whole lot, but in like the last 15 seconds we have, you think Governor Daniels would sign off on this?
Not sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's his money. He kind of helped move it there.
What Daniels will say is that they did it in the form of an automatic taxpayer refund. So when we get to a certain amount, you automatically get your money back. And I will always argue the money is always better when it's spent by the taxpayer as opposed to the government.
And will it pass?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
50-50?
50-50 right now.
Right. Or Kip Abdul.
70-30.
Thanks for coming in, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend. All right, make sure to stay up to date on political news anytime by following our insiders, Kip, Abdul, and Laura, on our Capitol Watch blog. You can find the link on our webpage, theindychannel.com. Indianapolis This Week continues after the break. With the Salvation Army, this is the 18th annual WIBC Radiothon, part of the Tree of Lights campaign, and successful so far for you?
Well, we're in Sunday, and we're coming down to the stretch, but we're doing great.
Tell people who want to give where some of this money goes, and maybe they don't know it goes.
The Bed and Bread Radiothon, right now, the money goes for the hungry and the homeless. We provide pantry meals. We provide meals in our institutions for individuals that are there. We provide utility assistance and shelter for individuals who are needing shelter. That's where the Bed and Bread Club money goes.
We've passed the Great Recession, at least we think we have, but what is the need like in central Indiana?
Well, last year we provided 96,000 nights of shelter. This year, 101,000 nights of shelter. So we've provided more shelter than the year before. 500,000 meals this year. So the need, what we're providing has gone up. The need has gone up.
And so if you could issue a plea to people out there, what would it be?
Help us, help others. You don't give to the Salvation Army, you give through the Salvation Army to help fellow Hoosiers.
And I know you know the number people can call today?
Yes, it's 877-717-3223. And you can call in, make a donation. You can do a $10 a month donation to join the Bed and Bread Club. $20 donation a month will get you an incentive gift. And it's very easy to give, or a one-time gift.
All right, Major John Turner of the Salvation Army, we appreciate you joining us, and thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of the campaign. I know the Tree of Lights campaign goes through January.
It does, through January, and you have plenty of opportunities to give.
All right, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays. All right, and give that number a call if you get a chance. And also, make sure to join us on Monument Circle Wednesday, where you can help the RTV6 toy drive. A lot of RTV6 personalities will be down there, Kevin Gregory, of course. And we'll be on the circle from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. collecting new unwrapped toys to help children throughout central Indiana. And that is all for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. For all of us here at RTV6, I'm Todd Connor. Have a great weekend.